I want to give a shout out to Mr. Richard Burns of GTM Now channel. That's Get That Money Now. Remember, what he's giving you is not financial advice, but he gave me the ideal for this series because you got a whole lot of adults out in these streets living a fairy tale and thinking that they are entitled, because entitlement, after all, is a fairy tale. So what I want to do is go back through some fairy tales we all knew as a kid, because most people who are alive right now of a certain age, I would say if you're my age, like going on 44, because I'll be 44 by the time this is probably played. So that's 1980s and back, because I was born in 1980. And we remember the Brothers Grimm. You still see those fairy tales. Some parents still allow their children to read them. But yeah, people out here for real, living a fairy tale and living in a fantasy of things that they deserve, or a fantastic life that they think they deserve, based on things such as Once Upon a Time and Happily Ever After. And they're living in a fantasy of how life should be and not the reality of it. I can't think of the full name of the book, but I'm reading it right now, which is sad because I should know that. Might be finished with it by the time the end of this video. From Ben Sasse, S-A-S-S-E, if I'm saying his name correctly. Up until 2023, he was, I believe, in Congress or in the Senate or whatever. And he wrote a book called The Vanishing American Adult, and how people are living in this Peter Pan syndrome and don't want to grow up. And I think I may touch on the Peter Pan as well. As of this recording, I'm still reading that book, but the reason that I recommend it is because I think it's a watershed moment in our history, that for the first time, adults actually want to enact fairy tales instead of recognizing that fairy tales are not real, and that you're living in this fairy tale world and fantasy of something that you think that you deserve, despite the fact that evidence suggests that this fairy tale you think you deserve does not really exist. So this is the start of me giving a hint about the series in the coming weeks. Keep up with it, because you'll see the fairy tales names and the dark history behind fairy tales, and how fairy tales have been sanitized to fit the industrial revolutionist taste. Because prior to history, prior to modern history, a lot of these fairy tales that had been told for centuries were ways of warning people about things. And they had to be sanitized down to fit the Victorian era, or what we call in the United States Gilded Age, romanticized ideals. See, the thing is, things don't exist in a vacuum. They reverberate based on things that have happened in the past. And I think that that is going to be one of the things which explains why people live in fairy tales and think that they are old things they are not. So what I'm going to do is bring the narrative of some of those fairy tales to life, those life lessons that those of us who actually act like adults Understand that life is not one big fairy tale, one big desire that you are just to fulfill. And I'm going to break down happily ever after. May break down once upon a time, but for sure I'm going to go in on happily ever after. Because happily ever after gets a lot of people in trouble. I don't know how many of these videos will be in the series, to be honest, but I've come up with lots of ideas. It could just be a sporadic thing after the first initial series where I go back, redo fairy tales, and then allow people to interpret what they mean, or do one every once in a blue moon. Well, all right, just keep an eye out on those videos. Thanks for listening and have a good day.